Whoa, what a cast. Like, especially the women, just wow. What is up, everybody? Random Man here, bringing you my review for the highly anticipated Black Panther. By the way, this review will contain no spoilers. You're all safe, as this film, based on the Marvel Comics character of the same name and following the events of Captain America Civil War, follows the title character, the Black Panther / T'Challa, played by Chadwick Boseman, as he returns home to become king of Wakanda, only to have his sovereignty challenged by a longtime adversary in a conflict that has global consequences. Going into this movie, I was definitely looking forward to it. Not just because it's the 18th installment in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Wow. Every time I see that number go up, I get more and more impressed of how relatively consistent this franchise has been for the almost full decade it's been around. But I wasn't just excited because it's another MCU film. I loved Chadwick Boseman's portrayal of the Black Panther when he was first introduced in Captain America Civil War, so it got me pumped to see his solo film. And also, this movie is co-written and directed by Ryan Coogler, one of the most exciting young filmmakers working in Hollywood today. His previous two films I've loved. His directorial debut with Fruitvale Station starring Michael B. Jordan. Creed, also starring Michael B. Jordan, which was the sequel / spin-off to the Rocky franchise. Fantastic film. And now he has come out with Black Panther. Starting out with the cast and their performances, as I've said in the intro, wow. What a cast this movie contains. And it's a predominantly black cast, which is already amazing in it itself. But the one leading the charge here is our title character, T'Challa / Black Panther himself, Chadwick Boseman. As I've said, I loved his introduction in Captain America Civil War. And here in his own solo outing, he is charismatic again. He is badass again. He looks great in the suit, but now he has a lot of weight on his shoulders in becoming the new king of Wakanda after the events of Captain America Civil War and then the conflicts he has to deal with here. He is excellent in this film, but he gets a bit overshadowed in certain areas by the stellar supporting cast that are as up to snuff as Boseman. We have Michael B. Jordan in the third collaboration with director Ryan Coogler in a row as Eric Killmonger Stevens. He is the main villain of this film, and a lot of people have been saying he is one of the best villains in the MCU, and I cannot disagree. This is one of the most sympathetic villains we've seen, not just in the MCU, but within all comic book and superhero movies in general. As if I was evil and nefarious, I would get to see his side and his point of view of doing what he wants to do within himself. And it's just really cool to see a three-dimensional villain like him show up in the film. He is fantastic. We also have Lupita Nyong'o as Nakia, the love interest to T'Challa, or I should say his ex. And there's even some funny moments involved with that where T'Challa is told to not freeze when he sees her. He does. And Nyong'o, great Oscar-winning actress, actually. She is one of the more compelling love interests we've seen in the MCU, where she is more of a humanitarian of sorts, and she does have some badass moments of her own. Danai Gurira as Okoye, the leader of the Dora Milaje, an all-female special forces team in Wakanda. I love her as Michonne on The Walking Dead, and she is also great in this film. Badass. A lot of the women in this movie really are badass. One of the few white people in this film is Martin Freeman as Everett K. Ross, the CIA agent who was also introduced in Captain America Civil War. He has great supporting work here. Daniel Kaluuya, currently Oscar nominated for his terrific performance in Get Out, shows up here as W'Kabi, a confidant to T'Challa, and he's also the head of security for Wakanda. Like, wow, he is great in this film. Letitia Wright as Shuri, the little sister to T'Challa. easily my favorite character in this movie. She's kind of like a younger version of Iron Man. She's also super smart, but she has a lot cooler toys to play with involving the metal, vibranium, and all that. And wow, she's just also really, really funny in this film. I loved her. Winston Dukas M'Baku. I'm trying to pronounce these names without butchering them too much, but he's the leader of another tribe in this movie, a ruthless warrior. He's cool. Angela Bassett. She has the least to do out of all the women in this film, but she plays the mother of T'Challa and Shuri. She's great. Forrest Whitaker as Zuri, like, wow, he is great. Andy Serkis as Ulysses Claw, who was first introduced in Avengers Age of Ultron. He's also another villain in this film. And he's just hamming it up on screen. He looks like he's having a lot of fun being this over-the-top villain with this really cool arm that he uses as a weapon in the film. And yeah, I'm mostly saying everyone in this movie is great because even with the varying amounts of screen time these performers have, I think that everybody here really did top-tier jobs. The writing in this film has a very unique approach in how it sets itself up in being a comic book / superhero movie, but also adding in some underlying social commentary as well, which I'll mention more of in a minute. But with the way this movie begins, we get a narration of how Wakanda was formed, how vibranium has a huge role in keeping up the advanced technology that this fictional African nation has. And that's what I have to mention right away too, because the world building in this movie, when we are first introduced to Wakanda and see all of its visual glory, the world building in this movie is second to none in a bunch of other comic book and superhero films. Like, wow, this is an astoundingly realized world visually. It looked so lived in, so unique in brimming a lot of African traditions, a lot of the culture. It just looked like somewhere I wanted to visit, even though, sadly, I can't go there. But wow, I was so enveloped in this world that was created on screen. And then with the rest of the writing and how Wakanda is portrayed, they pose themselves as a third world country, yet secretly they are among the most technologically advanced nations in the world, with vibranium, which in this universe is the strongest metal on Earth, powering a lot of their places, giving them a lot of their weaponry, all of that. And when we see what social commentary is involved with this film in its relevant politics, we see sides and points of views from both the heroes and the villains in what they want to do. The heroes, they want to keep Wakanda a secret and want to keep to themselves. And in a way, you can see them as kind of xenophobic, because when the topic of refugees is mentioned, they don't want to take in even those that are suffering the most because they don't want their problems to be their own as well. But with the villains, they want to take all of this stuff and they want to have their own nefarious methods, as I've said. Like with me almost sympathizing with what Michael B. Jordan's Killmonger wants to do. I mean, Andy Serkis's Claw also has his own deeds, but with Jordan's character specifically, I totally see his point of view in what he tries to do. And this involves the backstory of another character played by Sterling K. Brown, who is also tremendous in this film for his screen time. I do not want to give away who he is, but when we see that side, we do see a lot of the turmoil that is involved with something that is as timely to be shown in today's day and age. And then when we go back to Black Panther's storyline of him struggling to be king and just try to be the best leader he can possibly be, it all melds together into something that had me engaged from the start. I will say that this movie took a little bit to get started. It was slow towards like the first half hour of the film, and it was necessary because we go through a lot of procedural measures in getting set up, establishing characters, and even with Michael B. Jordan's Killmonger, he does show up towards the beginning, but then he's absent for about 30-40 minutes of the movie and then doesn't show up again when his motivations and deeds are revealed. Yet I found that to be not a problem because, again, when we do get all the revelations with his character, it's so three-dimensional, and I get to see where he is coming from as an outsider to Wakanda. Then for how absorbed I was in witnessing the world of Wakanda come out right before my very eyes. I cannot stress enough how amazing the world building is in this film. Wakanda is probably the best character throughout this entire film. We do get to see some technical merits that do help this movie pop out. Again, the way we get into Wakanda itself, but also in how it's representing a lot of African traditions and traits. It looks like a lot of research was done to get precise attention to detail down, even with the costuming, the hair and makeup, a lot of the objects and items that are used. It's simply great on that level of spectacle. And then the action sequences. This movie is less action heavy than some other MCU movies before it, yet when the action does hit, it is mostly well directed, especially with the hand-to-hand and weapon-wielding combat scenes that involve the Dora Milaje and a bunch of other characters, with Black Panther himself running around looking great, acting like an actual panther with his attack moves, and then the weapons that Shuri does provide for him. Shuri even gets involved in this car chase, which is exhilarating. I've also got to give a shout out to the music in this film. Not just the original score, but also the soundtrack that this movie put in certain areas. We have music here that come from the likes of Kendrick Lamar, The Weeknd. I definitely recognize The Weeknd at one point. And then with the original score, the way it sounds like it is something that also added on to the research being done with how the movie looks visually. A lot of African drums were used, horns, just making it feel like you are in an African nation. It just adds to the level of aesthetic that this movie presents. The running time of this film ran mostly well at about 2 hours and 15 minutes. And yes, this is a Marvel movie, so be sure to stay for both the mid-credits sequence and the end credits sequence at the end of this film, because yeah, you just have to, especially if you want to know what's to come. It all made for an experience that I was highly enjoying throughout. As for issues, like I've said, it took a little bit to get into the film, but then once it reaches a certain point, especially with Michael B. Jordan's character, it does get going in full speed, but I was still interested in T'Challa's point of view. And then also, there's just like some auxiliary issues that pop up in Marvel movies, and I've started to notice it more and more now with each subsequent film, like with the CGI. A lot of CGI was noticeable in this film where it did add on to the world building, but also with some extras looking like they were copied and pasted. The final fight scene involving Killmonger and T'Challa, when they were falling down, they looked kind of cartoony, artificially created, rubbery, like a video game graphic from about a decade and a half ago. Stuff like that. And you could even say that this movie's a bit predictable in certain areas, yet I can excuse that in how the movie does have a big emphasis in being political and commentating on what is socially relevant while integrating itself into the rest of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Because I think that this movie is fairly, actually highly watchable without having any prior knowledge to the comics or the film franchise as a whole. And this is all ultimately why I don't just consider this a great movie, but I also consider it a great starting point in adding on to the movement that this movie has created. As in the weeks and even days leading up to this film's release, there has been a lot of chatter in how much this movie has impacted the Black community. I cannot speak for that, obviously, because I am not Black, but I saw this movie with a good buddy of mine, Winston, who coincidentally is Black, and he wanted to see this movie with me, not just because it looked awesome, which I do think it is, but also we just witnessed a lot of cultural relevancy that this movie has. I mean, when we went into the theater, we saw a lot of people dressed up in traditional African clothing, headdresses, bobos even. I mean, people were really getting decked out, and some people would consider that being extra, just doing all of this for a movie, even if some of the people watching the film are not even in tune with comic books. But I would say, let them have their fun. I did have a lot of fun watching this movie with you, by the way, Winston. Shout out to you for adding on to such a great experience. In simple terms, the cultural impact that this movie is having, it's almost like this. Black Panther is for the black community what Coco, one of my favorite movies of last year, was for me and other people who share Mexican descent, where our cultures are being represented accurately and respectfully on the big screen in an accessible medium that almost anyone is able to view. And also with last year's Best Picture Oscar winner Moonlight, it also having a predominantly black cast, and it's showing off a lot of social commentary that is relevant, masterfully telling its story as well. It shows how much film can have an impact on a specific group of people. And by the way, you'll recognize somebody here from Moonlight pop up in Black Panther for all you fans of Moonlight out there. And also with another comic book / superhero movie of recent memory, Wonder Woman from last year, that showed off female empowerment without yammering it over our heads while watching the film, as Black Panther showed off a lot of empowerment for black people, black power I should say, and it just being so reassuring in having more and more people just get into what is being done with the film industry as of late, as Ryan Coogler and the rest of his team should be commended for making a movie that not just has something that is accessible for a specific group of people, but I think for everyone as well, as I was obviously so able to get into this movie. This is now one of my new favorite Marvel Cinematic Universe films. I love Black Panther for all of the reasons that I've said before, in it having such strong pros. This movie has me now pumped up to see Avengers Infinity War in less than 3 months now, and seeing more Black Panther, but in me just also appreciating this movie as a great film. Again, I love Black Panther. I highly recommend it. My final verdict for Black Panther is 4.5 out of 5 stars. Thank you all, as always, for watching. Be sure to like this video, comment on what you thought of Black Panther. Social media links in the description. Subscribe to my channel for more, and I'll catch you on the next movie review.